Hi everybody, Neil Malik from Knack Training bringing another Everyday Office video. Today's video is about how a linked text box, a dynamic text box that's linked to a cell that's somewhere else, can be a really valuable component to your data visualization. So you can see this in action here in the middle part of the donut charts, as well as here below the donut charts. Watch as I switch from the Human Resources Department to the Marketing Department. You'll see that the percentages in the middle change of these two donut charts, as well as the labels that are below, that show that this one is Los Angeles, this one is New York, and if I switch to, let's say, HR, for example, this one's New York and this one's Los Angeles. So these are text boxes that are just floating around and they have their contents being determined by another cell altogether. Let me go ahead and demonstrate how this works and what kind of value it can give you. So here, as you can see, I have different offices for our expenses. I have our total expenses at $8.1 million. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating a little table that says, okay, let's say that the office is New York. I want to know what the total expense is for New York. And then here, I just want to take the total expense from New York and subtract it from the total. So I get the remainder here so that I can make a little chart out of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is click in the cell E6 here and make a little drop-down menu. I do that by going to the Data tab at the top of the screen and clicking on Data Validation. It's about halfway across. Click on Data Validation and allow not for any value. This is the point of data validation, because most cells, you would just say, yeah, you can type whatever you feel like typing. But here, very specifically, I know that the only values that should be listed are here in this list of offices on the side. So I can say that the source of this list is these offices right here. If you'd like, download the spreadsheet and take a look at the guts of it. Feel free to follow the link to the blog post about this, and you can download that at your leisure. I'll click OK here, and now of course you can see London, England, for example, as the office. So now if I go back to my expense table, you'll see over here that in my expense table, I have Tokyo, Japan, and New York, New York, and Mumbai, India, etc. And then here I have the subtotals. So I want to add up the subtotal column out of this table if the office's full name matches up with what I'm talking about. So that's the SUMIF function, or SUMIFs. I'm going to use SUMIFs just in case I want to be flexible in the future. So here I am on the example tab. I'm going to start off with the SUMIFs function here. And the range I'd like to add up is all the cells that have subtotals in them. Now, if you did like I did, notice here that when I highlight all these subtotals, this immediately takes me and puts it in as TBL expenses, square brackets, subtotal right there. And then second, you see that I'm looking for the office's full name. So I highlight the first entry here in cell H4, hit Control-Shift down arrow. Okay, so if the full name of the office matches up with, and then I just hit this option here from the drop-down. Okay, so if we see an office as being London, England, go ahead and add that up, and you can see $981,000. And if I switch over to LA or Chicago or Atlanta, you can see that my expenses change, and so the remainder also changes. So if it's a big expense like New York, New York at 1.3 million, the remainder is relatively small. So now I'm going to make a chart out of this. Super easy to do. I highlight these 4 cells that have the value I'm interested in and the remainder. I go to my Insert tab at the top of the screen. And again, under the pie chart options, I'm going to go with donut. And really the only time that pie charts are particularly interesting is when you're trying to show this as a percentage of the total. It's not really great for comparing anything, but when I just want to say, hey, $1.3 million equals this percentage of the total, it's a nice way of making that happen. So I go to donut here, and I'm just going to trim off this extraneous garbage like the chart title and the labels down there at the bottom. Hit Control-1, format this so there's no fill color and no line color. I prefer to just have a chart by itself that I can float around wherever, and it doesn't have a box around it. Okay, so that's fine. Maybe I take a second here and make this wedge of the pie. Maybe I make it a nice dark green color, and then I make this other part of the pie a paler green color. Okay, so great. I've got my little donut chart there, and as I switch from New York to Atlanta, you can see that the wedge of the pie decreases substantially. And while it might be very useful to show the raw number that Atlanta, Georgia represents, the percentage is probably equal to, or if not more, valuable to us. So let's just take a second here and figure out what this is as a percentage instead of a whole number. So let's just a little equal sign here, take the 271,000, divide it by the total right up there at the top. All right, so 271,000 represents about 3%. If we want to make it the 3.4% by increasing the decimals, that's fine. And as I switch from Atlanta to Shanghai, you see that's 15.5%. Now, I want that 15.5% to go here in the middle, and I don't want it to be tied to the chart in any real way. I want it to be dynamic based off this cell, but I want to be able to put it anywhere it feels right to me in the future. So if I go to my Insert tab up at the top of the screen and I hit Text Box underneath that, I can draw a text box wherever I want, like for example in the middle part of the chart, that's fine. But instead of typing something into the text box, what I do is I click in the formula bar right up here at the top, I put in an equal sign, and then I reference that cell, for in this case it's G6. And I hit enter. And there you can see it says 15.5% here, just like it does there. But this is a text box, so that means I could put it over here, or I could put it over here, and there's no need for me to be particularly careful about this or to worry about it very much. And what's more, because it's in a text box, I have complete control over the formatting here. So let's go ahead and have no fill color, no line color. Let's bold that text. Let's increase the font size and center it, and maybe even change the font color so it matches. Okay, so maybe that is perfect for me. And so you can see here that Shanghai, China, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Tokyo, Japan, the percentage continues to change and reflect whatever that little table tells me. Life is pretty good so far. Now, on top of that, I can put basically anything else I want as a label. And it's important to recognize that that label, if I'm going to use a text box, it needs to reference any single cell. So let's say, for example, I want to take the name of the office written out and then put in colon, and then not just like $786,410.35. Let's say I want it to say 786.4K or something like that. Let me show you how you do that. So I'll go to any other cell, put in an equal sign because I'm going to be putting the pieces together, right? The first piece is Mumbai, India, right? So that's E6. And then maybe there's an ampersand because I want to concatenate more content onto this. And in quotation marks, I'll put in colon, space, close quotes. So now it's Mumbai, India, colon, space, and then it's time for me to bring in that $786,000. So I do another ampersand, but remember, I didn't want it to be, 786,410.35. So using the text function allows me to take anything at all, any date, any number, and reformat this in whatever way makes me happy. So I'll bring in the value of $786,000, cell F6. And then after the comma, you have to put in quotation marks. So quotation marks on either end, right? And I'll just close the parentheses there. So inside the quotation marks, this is the code that we're going to use to figure out how to represent 786,000. So first, I definitely need a dollar sign. And then after the dollar sign, maybe a space. And then if I use a pound sign represents a digit. Point, pound sign, comma. You see that right there? What that's saying is, you see where a comma would normally be between the hundreds and the thousands, between the 6 and the 4 up there? Now I'm saying put in something point something and then the comma after that. That's the same thing as saying, oh, it's 786.4 whatever. So now I'll put in quote, quote, K, quote, quote. See that right there? 786.4K. Nice, right? So now that I've got that all put together in a single cell, again, I can go to my Insert tab, grab a text box, put that text box down here, for example. Again, click in the formula bar, put in an equal sign, and reference the cell that says Mumbai, India in it, and then hit enter. Now, if it's not big enough, I could always reduce the font size a bit so it fits in there. I could always change the font color. I could bold it. I could, let's see, no fill and no line on the text box, maybe center it. And so I could put it down there, think about it for a little bit, maybe slide it up here, maybe slide it in the middle here. Maybe if I did it like this, it would be better. Oh, maybe that's good, right? So this is why I like that linked text box so much, because I can just sort of massage this around and figure out what works best for the situation. Maybe it's inside, maybe it's on the bottom, maybe it's on the top. Okay, so maybe that's the perfect setup. Then I switch from Mumbai to Sao Paulo. I get that new percentage. I get the new label down here at the bottom. Maybe it's Rome. New percentage, new label at the bottom. So a linked text box is a great little addition to your data visualization toolbox.